Okay, so good morning. This is John from HPEACE, which is Health Providers for Equity, Allyship, and Community Education. And today we're doing a 5 minutes with a member session or interview with Rosemary Soto from the County of Monterey. You are in the CAO office. Do you still work in the CAO office?
Yes, I do.
And the census effort, you are running the census effort, Census 2020 Monterey County?
That's right.
Okay, great. And that's within the CAO, the County Administrative Office.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so for those, I'm going to try to do something. For those who are a little bit more visual, it's also testing my skills. I'm going to try to So this is a little bit about HPEACE, once again, healthcare providers. And I use the term providers very broadly. You know, you don't have to be, in my estimation, you don't have to be a medical doctor to be a healthcare provider. Anyone that knowingly imparts knowledge and information to people that helps in terms of healthcare, I think I like to view them as providers because frankly, there are not enough medical doctors for the health and wellness that the communities need.
Very true.
And then equity is trying to get back in balance. It's a topic that is really important for folks like us who work in communities that are under-resourced. Our intention is also to create alliance with communities so that community action will hopefully be stronger by working with members of our HPEACE team. And finally, the ultimate goal for HPEACE, I think, is community empowerment. And where this all comes from is we really are starting to look at medicine differently. We're starting to look at medicine as, boy, we have not done a great job with a top-down model over the years. So maybe if we can look at the problems or the challenges and also the strengths within our communities and help improve the barriers, maybe we'll get better health outcomes. So that's really the intention of what HPEACE is all about. So now I'm going to try to go back to the regular screen, my regular screen, that is. And so yeah, I did a quickie introduction. Let me introduce yourself. Let you introduce yourself, Rosemary. It might be better than what I was able to put together for the audience.
No, you did great, John. Thank you. I'll expand on it a little bit more and share. So I'll start with a little bit about me as a person, and not so much in my work. I am a native here of Salinas. I was born and raised here in Salinas, California, and so very proud of the community that I come from. I was raised in a community in a part of Salinas that is actually just outside of the city limits, but it still has the address of Salinas. And so the jurisdiction that's responsible for the community that I grew up in is the county. And as many communities in Monterey County, it is a community that is made up predominantly of people of color, Latinos, Filipino, and just a couple of African-American community members in that town, but predominantly Latino. And I grew up in that environment where I saw a lot of the under resources. You know, there was not as much investment in the community. And so with that, you know, comes all of the, you know, complex social issues, right, that comes from having a community that is not given it or not afforded its adequate resources and services and attention that a community needs. So I think that's a big part of what fuels my desire to make a difference and to do a work that improves the status of my community all across, not just in Salinas, but all across Monterey County. And I've come to really fall in love with the various communities in the county because we're such a rich community. And sometimes we forget that. We forget that we have just some amazing people who are so generous with their time, with their energy, and the talent that is birthed out of our communities is always something that I am constantly in awe of. Our youth are so talented. Our elders are so willing to teach and, you know, show what their craft is, whether it be in the arts, whether it be in organizing, community mobilizing. I mean, we're just such an amazing community. So that's why I say I'm so proud of my community and where I come from. It's because of all of the beauty that I feel that I've been surrounded by. And with that, my work, I am working for the County of Monterey. I am in the County Administrative Office, which is the office that pretty much oversees all of the departments within the county. So the departments are, for example, your Department of Social Services, who is in charge of, you know, benefits and, you know, the child care welfare system, and so many other programs that many of our community members really need and utilize. And also it oversees the, you know, justice partners such as the district attorney's office, the sheriff's department, and probation. And then we also have, you know, so there's all these departments that can go on and on. There's like 20 departments that the county administrative office oversees. And so I really feel blessed to be working in that office because I really have the opportunity to build very good relationships with all of the leadership in those departments, who together we all really you know, are able to move a lot of our goals or reach our goals together and, you know, move toward in that direction. With that, the census is really important. And so the census being an assignment that I took on in the summer of 2018, which was to organize, you know, a complete count committee. And I'm really proud of the work that that committee has done. We're made up of all of the cities in Monterey County. Each city has designated a representative. And also nonprofits, community-based organizations are a part of that committee. Many have just really risen to the top in terms of their dedication and getting, you know, boots on the ground and just helping to spread the word, as well as community leaders are a part of that committee. So we've been at this for a couple of years now. We're starting to see the fruits of our labor with our percentages going up, and not to mention the challenges that we've been facing, which I'm sure we'll get into, you know, and I think it's just been a remarkable work that we've all done together. And so that's a little bit about me, about what I do and the current assignment that I'm on right now.
Okay, that's great. I like how you mentioned this is something that we in medicine have to, or we with a title have to learn how to do, is put the strengths first. I like how you mentioned in your introduction about how the resiliencies you've noticed and that you've become aware of or that you've experienced in Monterey County over the years, you know, because so much is talked about. The only benefit in Monterey County is how much we produce in terms of agriculture, you know, the $10 billion a year. But, you know, in order to do that, you need a workforce, really, you know. Certainly you need the growers. The growers have to be here, no doubt about it. But it's the people who are out there. Man, I don't want to go too far, but I was driving to Marina yesterday as an example of the resiliency of people. I was driving to Marina from Salinas yesterday, and off to the side of the road, I noticed all of the farm workers working away. And there was a man in one of the culverts who was weeding and raking, and all by himself. And I just passed him by and, you know, I said, oh, that's interesting. And then 3 hours later, I'm driving back the other way, and this fellow was still there. Looked like he was my age or maybe just a little bit younger. And he was an older, mature man, and he was doing the same pruning and weeding that he was doing and it just reminded me of, like, you know, that fable about the guy pushing the big stone up the hill. That's what it reminded me when I saw him. Like, wow, how can he at that age be doing that same work for 3 hours now? You know, and it's just, you know, it's something about the hard labor and the real value of our labor, and it just is not all it's not all measured in dollars, you know.
Right. No.
So let's see, how are you doing, Jude? Any questions that you might have, Jude, for Rosemary about her role in the county here?
I'm listening. We are also in a farming community here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Most of it is done with the Amish. So that's the community that does a lot of the farming here, the Mennonites groups. So right now there's a lot of plowing of the land going on, and you know, you can kind of smell the horse manure. The other day I was out and I smelled, you know, this odd smell, and it kind of smelled like rotten eggs, but it was, I think, manure, because they're, you know, farming and tilling the land right now.
Sulfur based.
I do have a question about how you got into county administration. You know, what were your interests in working within the county, and your interest in the census?
Wow, that's a good question. I started off in the private sector early on in my younger years, and I found that it wasn't a work that was fulfilling to me in my heart. I just felt like, you know, it was all about revenue. It was all about, you know, bringing in revenue for the company, and while that is good and necessary, it wasn't fulfilling to me. So I left a very well-paying job to come and take a job here in town with, at that time, was the Women's Crisis Center. It's a nonprofit organization that served victims of domestic violence, child abuse, and sexual assault. So I had always felt that that was an area that I wanted to learn more about, and I wanted to serve my community in that specific field. And so I felt very fortunate to have, you know, gotten, and it was an entry-level position, but it was great because it was just what I needed to learn about, you know, community service. And so I did that work for a number of years, and quickly rose within that organization into an administrative position. So I was able to learn a lot about, you know, nonprofit management, as well as, you know, the direct service aspect of the work. The organization ended up having to close. The board of directors decided to close the organization due to, you know, financial issues, as many nonprofits suffer from being to sustain itself financially. But luckily, I was able to facilitate and be a part of the growth of two other organizations. The Monterey County Rape Crisis Center absorbed the sexual assault prevention and intervention services, as that was their mission. And the YWCA of Monterey County was able to take on the domestic violence aspect of their services, as that was their mission. So those two organizations grew in the reach that they had throughout the rest of the county. So I always found that to be something that was of a success, because, you know, while one had to go away and it was beyond my control, it was something that, you know, allowed for two other organizations to really grow and continue to serve the people, which was the most important thing, is that the service doesn't go away. And from there, I really felt like, what am I going to do? I've been living and breathing this for the past, you know, 7 years that I was there. I just felt like I didn't know what else I could dedicate myself to and really feel connected to the work and believing in the work. And fortunately, there was a role within the health department in Behavioral Health Bureau that was focused on it was an administrative role, and it was focused on managing funds, state funds, And what the administrator, the chief bureau, really wanted was to have a perspective that looked at violence prevention and intervention, and that also had that mental health aspect to it. And because our organization also had a mental health component with their counseling and therapy programs, I was able to bring that specific, you know, desire to that position. So I was there for another 7 years, and I did a lot of work there in mental health. And then because my expertise at that point, you know, I've developed an expertise in violence prevention. There was a role that the County Board of Supervisors created, was to lead a violence prevention initiative for the entire county. And it was specifically focused on gang violence prevention, youth violence prevention. And so I felt like, well, that seems to be, you know, right up my alley. So it was a position that I then was selected for, and I've been there ever since. So I'll tell you that that role in the county administrative office, doing the work of the violence prevention, has evolved, because here we're talking about census now, right? So in order to do a lot of the work around violence prevention, around racial equity, there needs to be a very strong connection to community engagement. And, you know, really having, you know, placing community voice at the forefront. You know, you cannot do anything for a community without the community, really. And so that had been a big part of, you know, really the cornerstone of my work and how I do my work. And so the office, the unit in which I work in, was even renamed to the Office of Community Engagement and Strategic Advocacy. And so that's the unit that I work in within the county administrative office. And with, you know, looking at the you know, gang violence prevention, I told my boss at that time was Manny Gonzalez. He was the assistant county administrator. He's now retired, enjoying retirement life, but he's still a mentor and friend. And you know, when I first got hired by him, I told him, you know, we can't solve or resolve the issues of violence unless we are addressing the systemic and institutional.
I'm
engaged in gangs or other activities that, you know, lead to violence. And I was very of that. That led me to introduce to the county the theory of governing for racial equity, which then became an initiative adopted by the board in 2016. And that is so broad, you know, it covers so many other issues in the community, not just violence and violence prevention, which is really what we need. Because when you look at homelessness and the root causes of homelessness and the risk factors, you can tie it back to, you understand it to be part of the institutional issues, right? And you can go on and talk about other issues and you'll see the same thing. So when the census came around, it was, you know, they looked at who within our office would be able to carry on that work. And so I was selected to be the one. And I honestly, Judy, I resisted that work, that assignment. I said, what? You know, because it's not like I wasn't busy, because I definitely had a lot on my plate already. And so that was one. Capacity was a concern. And the other was the fact that I felt like such a big hypocrite. I have never completed the census in my household, in my family. And in fact, I would discourage my family and close friends from completing the census. And the reason for that is because I grew up in an environment and in a community where you
Yeah, you don't share information, huh?
You do. And so I felt like, you know, how can I be leading the work on the census if I myself don't really see it as important as it is, and I had never completed it. So I was honest with my boss and said, I can't do it because of this. And that didn't matter. I still got the assignment, and I am so glad I did, because I learned so much and I gained a new understanding.
So I'm glad you asked that question.
To find out the demographics of my community, I would always look to census data. And so now I felt like, okay, I learned I may have been what is considered a hard to count population, but now I know how important it is.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm really thankful for Judy asking that question because, we're so busy, like you referred to before, Rosemary, that we can have a tendency to see each other's only in the role we see them in today. But I didn't know, for example, that you had that extensive health department career before coming to the county. So that's great. So it looks like Rosemary is having some difficulties with her transmission at this time.
I think
Yes.
my camera froze.
Yeah,
Oh, yes,
okay.
it froze.
We can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you too, but I think my camera's just frozen. I can put up my picture if that looks better, because I look kind of funny.
Okay.
The challenges of audio visual connections.
Right.
And then we have another member who's joined us now. Hi, Kitty. This is
Hi.
Yeah, thank you. And we're just hearing from our guest, Rosemary Soto, from the Monterey County Administrative Office, and she's managing the 2020 census rollout in Monterey County. And the program in particular is called Complete Count Committee, making sure that all the populations, we can do as good a job as possible at getting a correct census number.
Thank you. I'm sorry to be late.
Okay. So are you still with us, Rosemary?
I'm here.
Okay. All right. So thank you again for sharing that introduction to us. Very rich. So here's my next question will be, in your words, what is the topic you feel like you'd like to share with us today, with the HP's audience today? And certainly we know that it's been a very challenging year all around for something time sensitive like the census. What with the pandemic, the bullying by the administration, and now the fires. So can you share with us, what is it that you'd like us to know about the census effort? And there are more questions to follow.
Well, I think I would like to share first is that, I'd like to take us back to 2010, which was the last time that the census was conducted. It's only conducted every 10 years. It's a decennial census. And in 2010, we only had a response rate of 64.4%. So that means that only 64% of our population participated in the census. Every time, for every person that participates in the census, that means that we will receive $2,000 per person every year for 10 years. So that's $20,000 a decade. And what happens is that, we don't have, we've seen over the last 10 years that we have a lot of needs in our community and not enough money, right? Not enough funding. And I think that's the important piece for people to keep in mind when we talk about why is it important. It's about funding, it's about money. And then it's also about power, about representation in Congress. The congressional apportionment is decided, it's determined based on the census data. So in California, we cannot risk losing representation in Congress. We need to make sure that we have the representatives that we deserve based on how many people live in California. And if we stand to gain an additional representative in Congress, we definitely need to have that, because many decisions are made at the federal level that impact our lives here in our communities. And right now, where we stand, where we are in Monterey County, we are at 62.6%. So we're just a couple of points of percentages away from meeting where we were in 2010. And given that in 2010, that 64% rate was still very low, you know, we still need to increase that. It means that over the next 4 weeks, which is how much time we have left, we only have until September 30th, we need to do the most that we can to encourage everybody that we know to complete the census. And what our partners in HPs can do is, you know, help us spread the word, help us talk about it and build, you know, awareness around it. You know, this is something that, you know, the individual can do a whole lot with it, and just talk about it with everybody that you know, your neighbors, your friends, relatives. You know, share postings, follow us on our social media pages. We're at on the Facebook, we're on social media, we're on Twitter, and share what we post, you know, on your own pages. If you work for an organization, talk to your organization and get them to share it too. There's a lot that we can do. There's so much power in just helping to spread the word. And if there's a way in which you can get involved, if you have time, we're going to start taking volunteers. We have questionnaire assistance centers that are set up throughout the county. So those are ways in which you can come and help people complete their census questionnaire. But more than anything, help us talk about it. You know, let's build that conversation up wherever we go and wherever we are. And just, you know, as random as it may feel, a lot of people just don't really know about it. You know, they see it in the commercials, they see it in billboards, but it's not something that we normally talk about in our everyday conversation.
So let me ask a couple of, these are kind of side questions, but you said that $20,000 per decade for each participant that participates in the census. So is that the same nationwide, that number, $2,000 per individual per year?
Yes, it is. Yes,
okay.
Nationwide.
Okay. And then, so what would be the statistical goal for this year? Just to get above 64%, or?
Well,
as much as possible, of course, now that we're down to the last month, right?
Yeah, as much as possible. Our initial goal was to get to 75% because it would be 10% more than where we were in 2010.
Sure.
Of course, you know, we always want to kind of set it really high, and my dream would be to get to 100%. But you know, knowing how challenging that was going to be, you know, we'd looked at, okay, what's realistic, and if we can get 10% more than where we were last year, that'd be a win.
So
you know,
my tendency, and so this is going to lead to a question of what are the effective methods to get people to participate. My tendency would be to, let me share my screen again, is to show information like this. That is, you know, what programs are at stake by not completing the census, right? Most of them, from what I can tell, I'm not a budget guy in general, but it sure looks like a large money that's derived from the census goes to healthcare. It looks, by my calculation, something like 60% of the money that's generated by a good census count goes to Medicaid, which is a tremendously important program to a working class county like Monterey. Substance abuse programming, mental health programming, food, right? Poverty programs. So that would be my approach to getting people to participate in the census. But what works? I don't know that my statistical numerical approach works. What is it that works to get people to actually, what would I tell them more than, oh, please fill out your census? I think it's important for the reasons I just showed. What else am I going to come up against that'll help me be successful in my recruitment?
You know, that's a great question, John. I think that for everybody, it's going to be a different conversation depending on the individual we're talking to, right? Because for maybe for some, the health aspect of the census isn't necessarily on their minds, and it isn't something that they would necessarily first be concerned about. But maybe they are parents, maybe they have children, and so they care about having resources for their children. And education is largely funded. There's a lot of funding that goes into schools. It goes into after school programs, free and reduced lunch programs, early childhood programs like Head Start, and even daycare. All of those programs rely on census data for the funding. Even to be able to be eligible for certain grants, different title grants, they are required to meet a certain threshold in census data. So just education might be important for young parents of young children. College students, the youth, sometimes it's hard for to have a conversation with youth because their minds are really focused on the today and what's going on in their lives today. And for many households, having the money available to pay for college isn't always there. So there's grants. You have it there, Pell Grants. That comes from census data, and that's really important, just to have the ability to pay for higher education. There's also, not every student is interested or goes off to a four-year university or to college, but they might be interested in vocational programs. Vocational and career technical assistance, technical programs, those are all also funded through education grants and funds that are based on census data. You have housing there. We all need a roof over our heads regardless of our income levels. And so if we're going to access programs that help subsidize housing, that is another aspect to talk about. So I think it's just having a little bit of a knowledge of what might be of interest to the individual. That is something that we could look for to have a conversation. In one of the conversations I've been having a lot, and I feel that has made a difference, is the fact that we're living in a pandemic, in a global pandemic, right? And just sharing how our county, our communities have had to be responsive to the impacts of the pandemic. Everything from testing to making sure that our hospitals are ready and well equipped to receive, and even our Office of Emergency response, and the teams that are put together to be able to respond to the needs as a result of the pandemic. We know all of that is emergency preparedness and emergency response that to even have it in place, ready to go at any given time, all of that is funded based on data from the census. And the fires is another example. The fact that we didn't have enough resources here to fight the many fires in California also kind of goes to show, well, the limited resources is also because we're largely funded by public safety is largely funded by census data, based on census data.
Yeah, that's important to know about the programs. I learned a lot in preparing for this interview. I did not realize the health aspects were so high, but as you referred to, above and beyond the health aspects, the other issues about maybe not having, living close to poverty and the consequences of not having sufficient resources at the school that you should. Like, I would imagine there's many Title I schools in Monterey County. So that's another sort of knowledge-based argument or knowledge-based discussion you can have with parents about the importance of the census. But what about can you speak some to the other barriers, the other types of barriers that the census workers might have, like I don't want to share my information, so privacy. They're not going to use it in a positive way for me as a member of the immigrant population, I imagine is something you hear. And I was alluding to before the bullying that administration did at the very outset. So what are approaches for getting around those hesitancies about participating in the census?
Yeah, those are very important points, and they definitely have presented a lot of challenges. One of the ways in which we can, rise up against, the rhetoric and the racism that we've heard from the administration, and wanting to exclude our, immigrant population is to be counted. It's a way in which we will demonstrate and show that we are here, we are represented, and we deserve the resources that we're entitled to as a result of how, the forefathers of this country set up the census. We got to remember that the history of the census was established because it was thought, or it was the goal to have equality in terms of power and money, and how it would be the funding would be distributed throughout the country. So it's a way to take that and say, I am here, I am visible, and I'm going to be counted. You will count me. The good thing is that the census counts everybody who lives in the United States. And it does not matter whether if you are a native to this country, whether you are here, as a documented or undocumented immigrant, it does not matter. Everybody counts. And so that is a powerful thing. I would love to see that my community is empowered to be counted, to be represented regardless of status, because your information is protected by Title 13. It is a law that prohibits the sharing of census data with anybody, with any other federal organization, even with the Office of the President. And that is why, we have seen the president take on this role, as you describe it, as a bully, and really just coming down on our communities of color, immigrant communities. And he has tried many different avenues and have not been successful, and will not be successful, because we have this law that protects us. And one of the things that is important also to note is that aside from the confidentiality and the protection that the data has, it is also the census questionnaire does not ask about your citizenship status. So that information is not anywhere in that census data. When you participate in the census, there's no question, there's no way of knowing whether you are even a native to this country. So your citizenship status is not questioned, is not, all it indicates is your race, ethnicity as you identify. But you could be coming from anywhere. You can be from here. I am Mexican American, and I will identify as that. And it doesn't show up whether if I was born here or not. So that's something that it's important to know, is what the questions are and how they will be used.
So yeah, I feel like I've been asking a lot of questions, and I do have more, but I'll open up any questions you might have for our guest, Kitty.
Okay. One question I have been, in the past, I was working in Watsonville with the Community Action Board in calling hard to reach families about responding to the census. And I think they have an ongoing campaign. I haven't made phone calls recently, and I think one of the difficulties that I found when I did this was that my Spanish is not so good, and I could read the script in Spanish, but I couldn't make people feel at ease to interact with me. And I wonder what if there are people who are native Spanish speakers who are working on this in Monterey County too. I also will share in the chat another item in a few minutes, but if you could answer that question, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, we do have, many organizations that whose services are offered in Spanish and English and other languages as well. We have community leaders and community representatives that speak Spanish. We also have groups that speak the indigenous Oaxacan languages, such as Triqui and Mixteco.
Mhm.
So we've done the best that we can to be as responsive to the language needs of our community. So yes, definitely, Kitty, thank you for that question. It is so important that we do this work in a way that is not only sensitive to the language needs, but also culturally relevant. We've got to make sure that we're talking about it in a way that makes that it makes a connection to the individual and to the community. So
Mhm.
that we've definitely continued to do this work in that way.
Thank you.
Okay, and along those lines, I understand that you can participate electronically now. To make it easier, this is the first census that you can participate online, and then by phone is what I understand as well.
Yes, so the website is, my2020census.gov. I'll put it in the chat as well. It's definitely easy. Only 9 questions. It takes less than 10 minutes. And so that can be done online. And the benefit of doing it online for me personally, if I can be a little bit selfish, is that we know our response rates right away, almost instantly when you complete it online, because it's electronic data. And so we don't know who did it, but we know how many people have completed the census in our county. And you can do it by phone. You can call 1-844-330-2020. That's in English. And in Spanish, you can call 1-844-468-2020. And that's in Spanish. So it can be by phone. People probably also got the paper questionnaire in the mail. And so people can fill it out by paper and then mail it back. And so that's another way to be counted. And also, just this month, in the middle of this month, August 11th, was when the Census Bureau workers started to go door to door. So they're knocking, on doors that have not completed the census questionnaire. And they are going to do that all the way up until September 30th. So if someone knocks on the door, if you feel a little concerned about whether should I be answering the door, should I be giving this person my information, ask to see their badge, ask to see that they have a Census Bureau badge. They will be carrying a Census Bureau little messenger bag across their shoulder. So you'll know whether if they are legitimately Census Bureau workers by looking at their badge and the handbag that they carry across their shoulder. And also, even if you don't feel comfortable at that point, you can also call the Census Bureau to make sure that that person is an employee. And maybe you don't want to go through all that trouble. Well, then just go online and do it yourself if you feel like it. But you can trust the enumerators. They are sworn to confidentiality and keeping your information private. Many of them are locals because they tend to hire people that live here as well. So sometimes that's good too.
So thank you very much, Kitty, for bringing up that point about the importance of trust for communities like ours. And trust, a huge part of it is being able to communicate with someone. And Rosemary, you also mentioned like how to verify kind of that this is a real census person. All of these awarenesses will help us be better advocates for, or allies to help people complete their census. I think it's really cool that despite all the chaos that 2020 has brought us, that you're still so close to that, to getting
Yes.
at last census's numbers. So I'm sure when when you guys put together that goal of 75%, I'm sure you didn't foresee pandemic and fires happening, but we are very close to what happened in 2010, and I think that's a tremendous accomplishment. So
Yeah, we had no idea we were going to be dealing with all of these challenges.
So good work there. Can you, as we're winding up, because I'm always afraid that my feed will end with Zoom. So as we're winding up, Rosemary, what's happening? I notice when I visit the website, there are a lot of events planned. There are many things throughout the county. Is there anything happening in this upcoming week that we should know about, that members should know about?
This week we will have, we will be in different places with our computers and having questionnaire assistance centers set up. Actually today at Tacos Acámbaro in Salinas, which is a taqueria, it's a restaurant on Alvin Drive. I believe it's 612 Alvin Drive. We will be there for a few hours from 3 to 6 p.m. And anybody who comes out and completes their questionnaire, you get a free order of tacos. So
wow.
Who doesn't love tacos? We really, want to encourage people, and sometimes, a couple of tacos really helps out and encourages you to complete your questionnaire. And we'll do similar activities throughout the weeks over the next month in different parts of the county. So stay tuned, check out our Facebook page. You'll see events that come up. And help us spread the word. Bring a friend that loves tacos, or
Exactly.
hasn't had a chance to, or maybe has questions about their census questionnaire. We're going to be there, so we'll be having them in Salinas, in South County cities, such as everywhere from Gonzales down to King City, or even further if we can. A lot of planning is still happening for the next 3 or 4 weeks, but check out our page and we'll be posting them all there.
So yeah, this has been a very informative session. I've learned about the importance of the census in terms of representing ourselves and having our voices heard in Washington, D.C. I've learned about ways to talk to people about the funding and how the funding is specifically important to them with this particular effort. I've learned about how their privacy in a community like ours, how their privacy is really guaranteed by law, that no matter what you heard on television, that your information is safe. And I will share with people how close we are to goal. And I'll use that as a push to, come on, let's get this done. Let's do better than we did in 2010, because it really means something impactful to our community. And then finally, yeah, I will try to share as much as I can on my HP's page and with folks I come across online, that we're down to the last minute, we're down to the 11th hour. And so much of what we do as healthcare providers hinges on the appropriate funding that the census will inform. So really appreciate your spending time with us during a busy weekend, Rosemary, and really look forward to working with you more on great projects like this.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you covering this topic, and I appreciate the time that you, Judy, and Kitty have given us on a Sunday morning. It's amazing. Again, truth to the power of our community and the willingness to dedicate our time and energy to important topics and issues in our community. And I appreciate you all very much.
All right, so thank you so much. And
Yes,
each of us.
It was nice meeting you too.
All right. And on each of us to the finish out a great weekend here in Monterey County. Thank you all once again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.